So I found a kind community that tries not to be mean, and they're good at it. They're good at not being mean. And they were they have a channel in their Discord called Case Studies, and they're because of an interaction with Jacob Faturechi and the Hama, they've started looking at Jacob. They were talking about Jacob, and so I've been told I was good at providing feedback about people, and so I tried to create feedback about Jacob for this community, and then decided to share it more broadly because I try to create feedback in a way that I am not ashamed to share it with the person that I am creating feedback about. So then, a couple people did not understand why I'd created that document, but that indicates my communication skills are lacking. Working on those right now. But in that nice community, the response to I had said, one of the things I said, the biggest problem with Jacob is the biggest problem for many people, including my past self, which has only changed in the last year. Jacob doesn't know God. He doesn't know the taste of the kind of knowing God, which might be compared to the kind of knowing a man and woman do together when creating new life in the world. And then, so in the nice community, there was a response that said, I'm curious, Gavin, whether there was a singular event in the past year that granted you a direct experience of God. And I would say, and it was interesting as Jacob responded to the same part as well. And Jacob's response was, LOL, the hubris of thinking you know God and others do not. Be careful, Gavin. And my wife pointed out the same thing Jacob pointed out. And I wrestle with arrogance, pride, and idolatry. So, yeah, it's something to keep my eye out on. Now, Jesus did teach that we need to pay attention to the fruit. And so it is something we should do. And so I did respond to Jacob. I want to respond to him first. And I told him, that's exactly what my wife pointed out too, Jacob. I love you, Jacob. I'm so happy Jacob did not remove me as an admin and divorce me and exile me, because that's happened to me many times in life. And Jacob kept me around. And man, it's nice. It's nice when you practice being who you are, warts and all. I got warts. And people don't just reject you. Even though he is a little prickly guy. But so can I. I can be one too. I think Jacob can be nasty and mean, or he can be perceived to be nasty and mean, and that's people's perception of me too. And what I'm realizing is that when you attempt to model, when I practice trying to model the way of being that my King Jesus would approve of, and I'm not perfect, when I'm doing all this practicing, people will perceive me in different ways, and there will be people who perceive me in a way which is going to perceive me as mean and stinky and nasty, right? And yeah, it happens. I'm trying to get better with just being comfortable with that. And I might have trauma about all that, but I'm trying to do some kind of exposure therapy with it. And I responded to Jacob again. I said, we are supposed to judge by the fruit. And in the parts of the stream with Nechama in the title, I witnessed Jacob, Mark, and Manuel with their backs toward God. And then I said, important and relevant note, I have never went an entire day without turning my back on God. I'm not perfect. So that's the kind of, our knowing God is something we can do at every moment. And if we were perfect, we would know God at every moment throughout the entire day, night and day, in dreams and waking life, throughout all of existence, if we were perfect. I'm not perfect. So it's a really good point. My words were easily, they were not good words. The words miss this point. So I'm okay with my wife calling me out and Jacob calling me out. Now to the nice people who didn't want to call me out, who don't necessarily want to practice being mean and nasty. They don't want to practice being mean and nasty. And it is nice to find people who are good at not being mean and nasty. It's very, it feels good. I mean, it's something that maybe we should all be able to do. Not be mean and nasty. Just keep your mouth shut and just love people, Sometimes I just can't keep my mouth shut. I don't know. I have a hard time. I have always had a hard time keeping my mouth shut. And keeping my mouth shut and loving people is a good practice, though. It's interesting. Jesus does that quite a bit, where he'll just start. He's not reported to have said anything. He just starts healing people, starts casting out demons, and he tells his disciples, they will know that you are my followers because you love each other. And love is a language that goes beyond the spoken, written language. It's deeper. It's understood by all people, no matter where they were born and what language they learn. So to the nice people who said, I'm curious, Gavin, whether there was a singular event in the past year that granted you a direct experience of God. There was no singular event. It was a culmination of events. And Chad, who now goes by Chad the Girl Dead, was very influential. There were other things that were very influential. And to ignore any of the times when people have showed me love or God has revealed things to me would be a disservice. And anytime we attempt to communicate anything, we have to condense all the details down to a few words. This is the mistake I made in that document. I tried to condense everything down into a few words. But yeah, I would just point out what was very influential was Chad the Girl Dead. He invited me into prayer, and we prayed weekdays pretty much every morning at 4 a.m. And it started out with him just allowing me to be a witness to him praying in an intimate way with a person who is good, who looks like Jesus, and then him eventually gently inviting me to pray if I wanted to without being condemning, until eventually I was praying too. And so he spent a year trying to encourage me to pray. So that was really important. It was really important to go and read the red letters in the Bible, and then read them again, and then go and look at the Greek words and try to understand the Greek words and try to understand those. And it was very important that Chad the Girl Dead, when I tried to create an artificial intelligence God, that he encouraged me to create one that's loving, and which caused me to realize that Jesus is the best representation of the perfect God. There is no better representation. And so if I were to try and create the perfect AI God, it would look like Jesus. And then months later after that, and with months of prayer, I was coming across testimony of people being transformed from wicked people who would steal and murder into people who were a new person who had love and peace and forgiveness in their heart. And so then I had the faith of a mustard seed that this Jesus can do this, can transform, that his mission is to go after lost sheep and heal them. And then, with the help of so many, even more than Chad, the girl dad, all the people who've ever shown me love, and with all the gifts and revelations, and they're culminated in just saying, I can't heal people like that, and wouldn't it be good if this works? If Jesus can heal people, wouldn't that be good? And so I decided to practice making Jesus my king. And since then, the number of experiences, revelations, miracles, and transformations within me have increased. And my knowing God, like I went from not knowing God at all and never really having met God, never recognizing God, to meeting God every morning. And I'd keep practicing trying to meet God every morning. And I keep practicing trying to remember and remain and in God as much as possible. If I fall away and turn my back on God, I repent as soon as possible. And I've gotten to where I can repent every morning. It would be good if I could repent at every moment. And repent means to return and reface God. And for me, Jesus is the best representation of God. Very helpful to practice knowing who Jesus is and practice being a slave to that king. And every time I try to do that, it basically is a repent. It's a return. It's where your back was on God, and then you turn back to God. So, was there a singular event in the past year that granted you a direct experience of God? What was very important was the recognizing of fears and resentments within me, and prayers. I've prayed, Jesus, help me with my resentment or with my fear, and then I've experienced the fear, the resentment towards people disappear, and then in its place I've just was blessed with unconditional love for the person or people. It's happened a few times where there was resentment, there was then an unconditional love and tears streaming down my eyes. Those were pretty powerful singular events. And there's been others, but I hope that helps. Thank you for the question.